Families podcast with Dr. Justin Coulson. We're Luke and Susie, parents of 3 little boys, and this is the podcast for those of us who are time-poor parents who just want answers now.
And in a digital age, we can think that the worst thing for our kids is for them to constantly be in front of devices. But do we think very much about how it's impacting them for us to be in front of our devices?
And unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. So we have to stop that topic. We're not going to the expert. Look, we're out of time. Dr. Justin Coulson from happyfamilies.com.au. I try to avoid you, not because you're wonderful, but I got a feeling that I might be convicted of something here. Talk to us about how...
I won't point any fingers, I promise. I'll let Susie do that and no one will be able to see.
Well, so the thing is, we do spend a lot of time saying, those kids these days, all they do is they use devices and they don't get outside and play. What kind of an example do we set, Justin?
I was at a school in Melbourne just a couple of months ago giving a talk on having a healthy digital diet. And I was waiting for all the parents to come in and, do their thing and sit down so that I could talk to them. And I had about 15 or 20 minutes before the session started. So I actually decided to go for a walk out in the street and clear my head and just think about what I wanted to talk about. As I walked down the street, I saw a whole lot of parents sitting in cars. They'd arrived early, and rather than coming in and sitting in the hall and chatting with somebody on a seat nearby or just enjoying the peace and quiet before I began speaking, they were sitting in their cars on their phones, checking emails, checking Facebook statuses, playing Candy Crush, or Pokemon Go. And I thought, isn't this ironic that everyone wants to know how to get their kids off their devices, but as parents, we are not necessarily the best examples ever.
No, we're usually quite terrible, and I'm guilty of that. But having said that, let me tell you something that I've experienced recently with one of my boys in particular, who has started to go through a phase, and it's tongue-in-cheek and it's joking, and his older brother went through a similar phase where instead of saying, "I love you, Daddy, good night," or whatever, he'll say, "I don't love you," and he's having a joke, and he's constantly telling me he doesn't love me and that no, he doesn't want to go with me, and no, he doesn't want to play with me. And the oldest did that too, and it was just a phase, and they went through it. But with this boy, I noticed that we had a really tight-knit relationship when I started kicking the footy with him and devices down. And then this started up again after we had gone like a week or two with no footy kicking. And so I made him put the iPad down, I put my iPhone down, and we took the footy out and we started kicking again. Can I tell you that night he was, "I love you, Daddy," and hugs and cuddles. And devices down transformed our relationship instantly, Justin.
You've given me all warm fuzzies and goosebumps. At the end of the day, research is telling us convincingly that parents are not doing a good job at this, and we need to do much better. You can tell that you might have a problem with your devices, with your screens, if you wake up in the morning and looking at your screen is one of the first things that you do. And if one of the last things you do before you go to bed is you just check your phone, you check your emails, you check your notifications, and then if you kind of allow your meals to be interrupted by screens, and sometimes even if you're driving and you feel compelled to stop at the traffic lights and just check to see if that email or that notification has come through. And it's amazing how many parents I talk to who they say, "Look, I really don't want to admit this, but I do at least a couple of those things most days, particularly the waking up in the morning and checking my phone first thing and looking at it last thing before I go to bed." We can't give our kids a hard time for it if we can't get it together ourselves. Our kids are struggling with it, so are we, and the impact of this is negative all round. It's not like it affects one group. Well, actually, it does affect children in much more profound ways. It rewires their brains because their brains are developing. But you know what? Our brains are still changing as well, and it's changing our brains too. Not as profoundly and not as quickly as our kids, but the impact is significant, and we've just got to do better for our sake and for our kids' sake.
We're talking to Dr. Justin Coulson from happyfamilies.com.au about the impact of parents' use of screen time, let alone with our kids. I want to start talking solutions next. More with Dr. Justin Coulson on the way.
Dr. Justin Coulson is one of Australia's most respected parenting voices. His seminars have equipped and empowered thousands of parents to make their families happier. But sometimes getting to a parenting seminar can be tough. There's work and other commitments. Then there's the issue of the children and babysitters. Now you can watch one of Dr. Justin's seminars from the comfort of your own home and at a time that works for you. Sit in on one of Dr. Justin's parenting seminars as he takes you from confusion to clarity. You'll learn how to build a strong connection with your children, how to really understand them, and how to get discipline right. What your child needs from you. A seminar from Dr. Justin Coulson. Download this 90-minute seminar now or purchase the DVD at happyfamilies.com.au.
It's the Happy Families podcast with Dr. Justin Coulson.
And we've been talking about, often we'll say, kids these days, all they do is use devices and play computer games, and we've got to get them outside and they've got to play more. But the question is, how much of an example do we set, and what are our days and our moments, and how do we choose to use our devices? What sort of an example does that set? And that's a bit of a convicting thing for us to have a look at. Now, before we get on talking about solutions, Dr. Justin, I feel like, not that we've done this in this conversation so far, but so often we can device bash and technology bash as if it's the problem. But in reality, is technology the problem, or just simply what we allow to be our action of priorities versus what our character says our priorities should be? Is it the tech that's to blame?
I think that technology is generally neutral. It's up to us to determine the context and the content. And what I mean by that is we decide where, when and how we'll use it. That's the context. And we decide the content. That is what we're looking at. So we can use technology in wonderfully beneficial ways for ourselves and for our family by using it at the right time, in the right place for the right reasons, and by looking at the right content. And similarly, we can use it in terribly destructive ways for ourselves and for our family by looking at the wrong things in the wrong place at the wrong time for the wrong reasons, and it can mess everything up. So it obviously exists on a continuum, and sometimes are better than others, and some things are better than others to be looking at and doing.
I just wanted to establish that we're not tech bashing. That it's not saying you have to go off the grid in order to be a good parent.
No, not at all.
But let's go to the next
stage. It's nice
stage.
to do that now and then, though. Let's not write that idea off. I actually think it's really good. Yeah. I mean, when was the last time you genuinely powered down for 24 or 48 hours and just thought, that's it, no screens? It's a pretty unusual thing now.
I think I was 5 months old.
It does feel like a long time ago. So, Justin, if we're listening to what we're talking about here, and we recognise that we, as parents, are first thing in the morning, last thing at night, and during mealtime and during car time, screen users, like really recognising our own need to fix something here, and we're recognising that our children are having too many hours in front of their devices as well, what can we do in working together to help overcome this?
Well, let's just talk about parents for a minute, because I think that's where we focus for most of the conversation, and that's the hardest one to fix, because nobody really tells us what to do. I mean, we're in charge of us, and we'll look at what we want when we want. So the first thing that we need to do is establish some rules around when it is and when it isn't appropriate, and we might need to ask our spouse or partner to help us with that. We might say, I'm going to go out and buy an old-fashioned alarm clock, and I'm going to use that instead of my phone to wake me up in the morning. And that would mean that in the evenings, the phone goes away and the screens are all switched off at a certain time, maybe 30 minutes before bed, or 60 minutes before bed is even better. And they stay in the living room, or they stay in the study, or whatever room it is that you've got that's the right room. You put it in another room away from you, and then you go to bed and you do. Remember when we used to, pick up a book and read it, or we used to just roll over and spend some quality time talking with our spouse or our partner, instead of just laying next to them staring at a screen together.
We have no excuses. We just make those little choices to change what we do a little bit.
And ultimately, technology is a choice. I had this rammed home to me, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, when I said to my daughter, I think you've got a technology problem because, and I listed all the reasons, and I said, it's bedtime now and you're still staring at your phone. You know what our rules are. You're disregarding the rules. We need to go over this. We're not going to do it now, but this is not good. So she put it away. She was really, really wonderful about it. And she said, Dad, you're right. I do need to be better. So she put it away, and I thought, oh, that's wonderful. And I went and hopped into bed, and I picked up my phone. About 30 seconds later, she walked in so that she could say goodnight to Kylie and I. And she looked at me, and she put her hands on her hips, and she said, Dad, how do you think this looks to me right now?
Smart girl. Smart girl.
Oh, and that there, no need to wrap that conversation up. We understand that very well. Our guest is Dr. Justin
I got
Coulson.
schooled by my little girl.
Yeah. Dr. Justin Coulson from happyfamilies.com.au. Thank you so much for your perspective.
Love talking to you guys.
And of course, there are loads of resources available, lots of information, books, podcasts and programs. You can find them all at happyfamilies.com.au. But if listening to Dr. Justin Coulson makes you think that people in your organisation or school could benefit from hearing him as well, you can find out how to have Justin speak for your school or organisation at justincoulson.com.